Oh. Yes. What? No. I'll comment on that tonight.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, they did not. And at 5:05, I got a court order. Not a court order, a requested. So the guy drove up here and filed a case. Just a delay tactic. So we'll see what happens. But I happened to be sitting at the computer, so I received it and responded, got it right off to our attorney, which they probably were shocked. So they have been put on notice that we will be there whenever the judge puts it on the docket tomorrow. But there is, well, I'll tell this whole story.
Okay.
I'll use the play with my. Good to go. Call to order the budget workshop for the Village of Almont at 6:33 p.m. on Tuesday, June 10th. Welcome everybody to the Village Township Hall. Thank you for coming. I'm going to ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
President Dyke,
Present.
President Pro Tem Steffler. Present. Councilmember Feldman, Councilmember Glasser, Councilmember Miller,
Present.
Councilmember Powell,
Present.
Councilmember Schneider.
Present, sorry.
Thank you. Now is the time for public comment. Does anybody have any public comment tonight on any issue regarding the budget? Being none on the agenda, the budget workshop, I will turn it over to Village Manager Kerpison.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm prepared to go line by line over the budget if you would like, or we can refer just to those funds that were adjusted since our last meeting. And by that, that would be Parks and Rec, equipment, wastewater. Is there anything else, Kim? Those are the three that were up in the air and have had changes since we met the last time on the budget. Or I can go over by fund if anybody has any questions. It's up to you. It's a 100-page document and I'm ready to roll on every page.
Were there any major changes in the stuff on the line items or the accounts that were discussed in the previous workshop?
No, some of the key items that we've been discussing, it's an open placeholder in our revenue section of the general fund budget.
Okay.
Is the police contract, and that is just listed in there at a number that we originally started at. That will be modified at some point when we have a police contract. If we get to next Tuesday night when the budget's adopted, we hopefully will have a number by then to install in this spot.
So if council feels differently, speak up. Maybe it would be helpful if you could go through the summaries that you provided for each account in the updated budget, just to give us an overview. Then if council has any questions regarding any of those, instead of going through them all again, we can ask those questions, then we can go on to the new material. Is council good with that? Okay, we will proceed that way then. Thank you.
Okay, so, general fund, as I mentioned, this covers cost materials. This is, you're talking about going over my budget to summary that's in the front of the.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
So,
Thank you.
there is no change to the general fund from the last time that we spoke about it. It covers council, village manager, village clerk, accounting and financial services, village police department, village public works department, and planning and zoning. Then we go on to major streets, the fund balance that we continue to pay our debts down this year in the budget. We're going to do a village-wide crack ceiling project as we do every year. And of course, the St. Clair Street project will be undertaken significantly in this year, in this budget year. Fiscal year 25-26 fund balance is projected at $627,000, which is a little over 200 times or double the current expense list for major streets. Local streets, we are just continuing our maintenance on that series of streets. Again, a crack ceiling project, and we will be doing things in conjunction with the St. Clair Street project, radiuses and curb and gutter, et cetera, as we encounter them going up into the local streets as we see fit or as the engineers review it. The fund balance for local streets is $365,000, and again, that's roughly double the annual budget of local streets without a construction project. The one point of interest here is that we transfer a significant chunk of funds out of major streets into local streets, which is allowed by law because major streets generate in state share revenues quite a bit higher per foot than a local street does. Downtown Development Authority, their budget is not finalized, but we've had a good draft of their budget. Their fund balance at this point is $273,000, which is 96% of their annual expenses. Water tower, not toner. We could correct that. The water tower fund is something that has been out there. There was a millage in place. The annual expense is $157,000, and the revenue from the millage this year is $124,000. There is a slight fund balance sitting in that fund, but that will end up $83,000 or 53% of the annual expenses. That fund balance will be completely depleted by the last payment, which is 27?
28.
28. So 2 more payments. Wastewater sewer fund, we proposed an increase in the rates as we have done related to the study that was completed in 2020. We have collected proposals, as you know, from wastewater treatment plant facility operators. Something has been discussed for years. We went out, created an RFP, went out and got proposals in March, the end of March this year. We had a low bidder who is here this evening to talk about that bid. The number that is in my summary is incorrect because that we had improperly placed part of the maintenance money that we saw in our contract. It's more like $46,000, not $86,000 is the difference between our budget and the projected budget of the private corporation. At this point, the fund balance for the wastewater treatment plant is $6,300,000, roughly 6 times the annual expenses. But of course, as you know, that fund balance has to build to pay for the construction or reconstruction of a new wastewater treatment plant someday. So that will be a very significant expense. The water fund, the water line, as you know, will be replaced in St. Clair Street from village limit to village limit. This will dramatically increase flow throughout the village. There are 16 unknown water service lines in that stretch of road. By unknown, it means we are unable to verify what the material is. We do not know for sure, can't visually see it, can't touch it. So those will all be replaced during the project, which will eliminate all of our unknown water lines inside the village. The water fund balance is 3.5 million, or 4 times the budget expenditures. So to put this a little bit in context, those two large budgets, water and wastewater, when we continue beyond the St. Clair Street project, hopefully we can match the St. Clair Street project expenses, our share of the project, with cash in bank. And then the following year or two, be able to redo School Street and Day Street, as we have been planning, or the village has been planning for quite a long time. So those large fund balances will be used on infrastructure in the next few years. The equipment fund, we don't have a lot on the equipment fund this year. We're looking at purchasing a Ford Explorer to replace one more of the police vehicles, and of course the police package to bring it up to usefulness. We're looking at buying a wood chipper and a V-plow for a Silverado. The projected fund balance this year in that account will be $31,000, or 7, almost 8% of expenditures. That is our lowest fund balance in the village by far. So that's the run through, and we can go back and look at those individual budgets that I mentioned earlier if you'd like. Start.
Does council have any questions on the previous budgets we went over before? Then Stephen, if you've got questions, go.
Yeah, well, so we had our joint subcommittee meeting last night. We went over the DDA budget for approximately 3 hours. Got a lot of questions. So one, Kim, I'm hoping you can shed some light on how these funds are put together and how this budgeting works. So
Okay.
there's with all of us sitting around the table last night, there's an immense amount of confusion as to how this works. It was
Sure.
confusing that they didn't know how it works, we didn't know how it worked. So specifically the hospital insurance, health savings contributions, life insurance, salaries, OT, they all say DPW, but then they're not just DPW. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I just need to change the description. It's DPW and police, and it would be the DDA director as well, if that is provided for her.
So that makes it kind of hard for budgeting to know where you stand on what you're spending and what you're not spending, because that was part of the mass confusion last night that we were discussing.
Okay.
They budgeted what they believed to be 3,000, and then they're thinking they've spent about 3,000, and then they find out they've already spent over 6,000 with then another $5,000 bill on top of it, and they're going,
Oh, for police services, you're.
right, just as police services, because then they're
Okay,
going, well, wait a minute, we don't understand. How is it that we've done that? Because we're looking and we said we've only spent 3,000. It's because they didn't realize that those funds that say DPW are not actually just DPW. So it leaves them unsure of what they've spent towards DPW, what they've spent towards director, what they've spent towards police. Makes budgeting a little bit of a concern. But the detail report that essentially came up with generating the $11,000 total, so then we could figure out the difference between what they've paid and not paid. How did you generate that? You're generating that as you're going, right?
No, I received, information from, the police chief as to how many hours
Okay.
each officer worked when.
Okay.
And then we compared to what was charged through payroll versus what was on that list.
So we don't have like a detail report under each one of these line items to know what it actually consists of?
Correct. The way the payroll system works is, whatever hours are allocated to each fund,
Mhm.
a certain percentage of all of their fringes get expensed into all those separate funds. The Social Security, the pension, hospital insurance.
So it self-totals, but we can't tell what it's comprised of.
Correct. I mean, that report that I provided gives a list of the officers that.
Sure, but you see what I'm getting at? 'Cause-
Right. But it's not detailed in the general ledger number itself.
Okay. All right. So just first of all, I mean, obviously this makes their budget planning and us negotiating budget and direct contributions for police services an uncomfortable conversation because first of all, last year they were asked for direct contribution. They declined to do so. They thought the amount that they were asked to contribute was far too high. They didn't think they'd use that much. They said just bill us hourly, and then you'll have a whole year to track and show us what our expenses are, and then maybe next year we'll consider direct contribution. But so they budget $3,000. They think they spent $3,000 because they don't understand how it's being applied either. And then almost the entire fiscal year goes by, and they're given zero detail. And in Angela's inbox, she gets a $5,000 invoice with zero detail. Zero detail. She literally had only an invoice that says $5,000. She doesn't know what it's for. It makes it pretty difficult for them to itemize or even know where it's coming from. Because then when I'm walking in with that information, we're discussing it at a subcommittee, they're going, we don't even know what this consists of. And if this were any other contractor submitting a $5,000 invoice for services almost a year later with no itemization, would we ever pay it? Their board's going to turn it down 100% of the time. So it's a little frustrating because we're trying to get them to make a direct contribution and going that you'll save money, but the accounting is very late. It's confusing. They question that accounting because they're not sure that it's accurate now. And on top of it, we know some things aren't missing because we weren't tracking throughout the year appropriately. So it leaves that whole conversation quite a bit tenuous, but why is it going to be possible for us moving forward to be able to detail those and maybe submit reports like that quarterly?
Absolutely.
Okay. The admin fees that are highlighted on there, there's thousands of dollars of admin fees on there. What do those admin fees consist of?
That would be the cost that we incur processing the bills, writing the checks, making the copies, Kim's time tracking it, the chief's time tracking it. Again, that you and I had talked about how the list of officers and so on came in at the end of the year instead of throughout the year.
Right.
That really caused it to be a problem right here at the very end.
Right.
But going forward, it will be as incurred. It will come out as a statement and it'll say X number of police officer times, and that will include their all-in costs per hour, plus an admin fee, plus a vehicle if a vehicle's used or something like that. So that it'll be more easy to track what exactly happened where.
So I thought one of the benefits of us trying to get them to make a direct contribution was then lessening the burden on us to do the direct tracking. But it sounds like we're going to do the direct tracking anyways. But also, just real quick before you respond to that, I just want to throw this other caveat. It would make it impossible to ask for an accurate direct contribution the following year if we don't do the tracking anyways. If we forego the tracking, how are we going to ask for what's an appropriate direct contribution the following year? So it sounds like we won't get away from the direct tracking. We have to do it regardless of whether we get direct contribution or we maintain hourly, right?
Right, and what we've learned in the negotiations for the police budget with the township is that they want more tracking too. So in the end, we're going to need to do all the tracking we were trying to get away from. So originally, when I asked the DDA a year ago, I said, throw some of the money towards the police. You got all this new coverage, new people, new equipment. And I randomly picked a number of 20,000.
Mhm.
They're going to end up spending 11 to 13,000 this year with the police. It was over what I had just randomly picked.
Well, and
Going
also,
forward, that number, again, with all of the tracking that happens in this next year, I'm going to be comfortable we get up to that and maybe more in expenses, but it'll be month to month to month showing who, what, when, where, because the chief has been tasked and we have been requested that we provide that level of detail. Of course, that is exactly where the admin comes in to cover
Is
all
that-
that effort.
is that actual admin fee time or is it estimated admin fee time?
It's just a number we come up with that's kind of consistent across the board with everything we do.
Meaning it's a blanket percentage?
Right.
Okay.
For a street project, for police time, for billing a contractor for our efforts, whatever.
And what is the blanket percentage fee that we use?
20%.
20%. Okay. All right. So then the concept as I understood it, and I believe as the rest of the subcommittee understood it, was we are asking for a directed contribution. And even at the original number that you came up with, the spirit and intent was to create cost savings for them, right? Because you had said, offered them a flat fee of 20 because you thought that it would exceed 20. So no matter what the numbers are, the concept was to extend them a number that they would pay a flat fee that would ultimately save them a tiny bit of money. Is the expectation is that they would exceed whatever that direct contribution would be. My understanding is that that would be the flat fee that they would pay, and there wouldn't be excess charges on top of that, right? Because that would be the offer. Otherwise, why bother? Bill me hourly, I'll pay as the invoices come in.
Exactly. And in the end, it turns out that we're going to have to do the detailed billing anyway, so we might as well just stick with the non-blanket fee to save the tracking and that effort, because we got to do it. Now we know we have to do it moving forward, at least for the next year.
True, but I think that there's a conceptual problem here with the fact that it seems like we've made a very, very intense and significant shift in policy and in accounting methods in trying to get everybody to pay their fair share across every fund. And we're being very specific, detailed billing on everything so that it's all accurate and so that the general fund doesn't subsidize anything. But in that theory that I just laid out, if they did exceed whatever their flat fee contribution was, wouldn't we be doing the opposite of what that intention was? We'd be having the general fund subsidy. Let's say in that hypothetical that they exceeded the 20,000 and they went to 24,000. Doesn't that mean that the general fund is then going to subsidize the $4,000 difference? But we were doing this intentionally despite shifting otherwise across every other department and fund, right?
But at the same time, we would have not incurred the admin costs and
Sure.
the tracking efforts, so it would offset anything that it might go over. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, so, I mean, we obviously discussed direct contribution with them, but what I want to clarify first is again, that our understanding was that flat fee contribution would be it, as in when we look at the DDA budget and what is it, 338.811.001, their maintenance and service contracts for police, which they had at 3,000. But then they found out, because they're saying, well, how is it, we only budgeted for 3,000. We've spent about 3,000 as of last month, but then they're finding out they spent 6 because the other additional 3 they've already spent, plus the additional 5 for the total of almost 12, is actually spread across these other funds. So if they were to make the direct contribution, and if we were to accept it, I wanted to understand to make sure I got it correct, because this is how we discussed it, is that 10,000 would have been it. It would not have been, they also still pay across all those other funds, because then they're paying even more than what they would have billed.
well, you're saying the number 10,000. I don't know where that came from.
Because they were at a max, what I'm saying is, if they were to contribute, right now, they're under $12,000. And the concept was to offer them a small bit of savings in order to get them to be willing to make that direct contribution. So just in this hypothetical, we're looking at an annual cost of less than 12,000 where they're at right at this moment. So just using nice round numbers, if they were to contribute 10, it would be 10 only, and they wouldn't continue to contribute across the rest of the rest of these funds, correct?
if we went that route.
If we
It
went
would
that
be a
route.
concept, but again, the number I kept putting out was 20,000
Right.
and again, at 12,000, we know we still haven't tracked all the activity for the year.
Mm-hmm.
So I would believe it would go above 12. And again, if we do one full year of detailed tracking, we'll have a much more accurate
We'll be in a better
way
position.
to represent that next year
Mhm.
when it comes budget time.
Right. So despite us discussing and getting a direct contribution from them, now it's your position we shouldn't do direct contribution anyways, and we should pivot away from that and tell them, forget it, we're just going to stick to hourly.
Well, as of the 11:30 hour with the budgeting process,
Mhm.
and they weren't interested in it, they weren't interested in it last year. We've moved on from the concept. There's been no real time to go back and dig into what should be a flat number for them. So yes, I would say we just withdraw it and keep moving forward as we have been.
Okay. By the way, this is just a bit of an aside, because as we were going through it, they're not getting any reporting. The police reports that we get from you, Chief Willis, is there any chance we could also submit those to the DDA? Because some portions in there do
Sure.
concern them. They'd like to have
Absolutely.
some of those numbers to track as well. They were mentioning like, hey, they didn't even know what this was. What is Clemis? We've never seen these before. I just think it'd be great for them to
Sure.
get that in their monthly packets as well. But I mean, what do you think we should do as to, I mean, we discussed and reached a negotiation with them. Should we just wait and see how their board votes and then leave it up to council? Because it's, all right.
Question.
Because they
Did
said
you
they would
say-
still be willing, they said they'd still be willing to do it
Mm-hmm.
the old way if they were getting up to date.
Tracking.
Tracking reports.
Right.
And detail.
Honestly, it's difficult because I don't think they're really happy with either way. They don't like the direct contribution because it's based off of tracking that's not accurate. And to go back to hourly billing when hourly billing has not been really accurate either, and they're getting last minute bills without detail, they're not real comfortable with that either. And I don't really blame them. I'm trying to figure out where's the middle ground that makes them happy and makes the village whole too, so we don't end up having the general fund subsidizing too much, if any, and it doesn't seem real feasible at this point. I think that's all the questions I have on the DDA budget.
Well, before we move on, the DDA budget in our packet shows $3,000 for police.
Mhm.
Did they change that or that's?
Well, that's what I'm getting at, is we negotiated that to 10 last night.
Okay,
And there's also going to be a change as well for healthcare as well. For Angela's Healthcare, since they still haven't been able to acquire an estimate, they're going to put in a $5,000 placeholder for her to obtain health insurance while they're waiting to get an actual estimate for it. So those would be the two changes that were discussed. Excuse me, I apologize. There was another change that we did discuss. They are likely going to move the facade grants back to 40,000 from the 20,000. They want to make sure that they're offering more to the community. They thought that they might be putting that into their capital outlay instead, but they realized that they hadn't done that to extend their capital outlay, so they're going to be moving that back into the facade grants as well, I think. But those would be the significant changes that were discussed last night.
the reason I asked that is just to, again, highlight that we know it's gonna be well over $3,000. So
Oh, yeah.
for them to be aware of it in their budget, I wanted to make sure they knew that.
Mm-hmm, yep.
Okay?
Any other council members have any other questions on the funds that Dale's gone over tonight that we previously discussed in the previous workshop?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I do. So in our previous budget, we were presented with, I think, an overall number for our police budget, but we really didn't get much of an explanation as far as the breakdown of costs or an explanation for the very large increase from previous year's budget. And so, I mean, I would like to hear just an overview of why we're looking at such a substantial increase in our police budget from last year.
Sure, let me get back to it. Go through it, let's look at it line by line.
It starts at page 17.
17.
bookmarks on the electronic version.
Oh, that must be nice. So, as you can see, first line item, wages have increased. That is an actual number based on a tentative agreement with the police department on an increase in wages. It was a significant increase that ultimately brought them to still below average in this region. But it was a big increase in the actual expense, line
Okay,
item
so
expense.
we do have a tentative agreement?
Yeah, so the way I'm used to proposing it is we get through the budget workshop. The night we look at adopting the budget as presented, I will ask for an executive session, go over the contracts with you, the changes to personnel items, and then you guys, if you approve them, they would then be adopted right in as in the budget that has been presented. So we have a tentative agreement with the police department. It was a unanimous vote on their part. We asked for some specific concession items, and then they wanted to be brought up to the what's considered and what is researched to be the average in the area. So
And these numbers do or do not represent
they
that?
do.
Okay, so they
reflect
do.
that.
Okay,
They have been updated.
okay.
So then, in that case, all those things related to salaries roll up, being Social Security, retirement contribution, that sort of stuff. With the new officers comes a whole new series of healthcare costs. Because we're not a big enough group, we can't smooth our healthcare cost or get a volume discount. So each and every individual gets charged. So the older, the more kids, et cetera, the more expensive the healthcare is. And you can see that the healthcare in this case has gone up significantly from last year. It's more than doubled. So that is another big chunk in that number. Then as we move on to retirees, that sort of thing, we now have, we only have one person that's left to be able to receive our retirement still working for us. So in this next year, we'll have almost the maxed out number of retirees we would have. So that cost is at its top number. We go through, the other numbers are relatively small compared to the top two, the wages and the healthcare costs and the associates, things related to healthcare. Is there anything in particular in the police budget you wanted to ask about?
Yeah, I think there was some discussion about increase in staffing levels or going from, more part-time to full-time officers. Is there any comments we can make to that effect?
We can cover it and talk about it. Currently, Chief, did we have 7 full-time officers? He made some notes just so he'd be ready for this.
At one time, well, actually, if you go back 5 years, we had 9 full-time and 8 part-time. Currently, we have 4 full-time that work regular road patrol. We have 1 full-time at the school. And since school's out, it is now backfilling road patrol. So we have the 5 road patrol officers and 1 going to be retiring in the next few weeks. Not of those 5 though. And then myself and the sergeant.
So we're anticipating to be fully staffed, that we need another full-time sergeant, and then if that's promoted from within, someone to replace that individual. So we also would like to acquire some more part-time individuals to supplement where we have people off, vacation, sick, whatever. But again, they're only costly when they're used. They only have a charge. So
Quick clarification on that. You said 3 more full-time officers last meeting, 3 more full-time, and then how many additional part-time officers were you looking to add to that as well?
if you want to answer.
If we can get somebody to work here.
Yes,
If
but,
we can fill the positions, ideally, we haven't had an afternoon shift here. Well, prior to me coming here, there was always an afternoon shift. One of the two resigned prior to me coming here, and then one was terminated since I've been here. So we haven't been able to fill those two positions. In a perfect world, I'd love to fill those.
Okay.
But at bare minimum, I would still like to promote an additional command officer for supervision management purposes and then backfill that position.
right.
So that's 3 full-time.
So 3 additional full-time, but then, so my question was, is that you just were also talking about additional part-time as well. So if 3 additional full-time, how many part-timers on top of those 3 additional
Well, it all
full-time?
depends on the part-time officers
Mm-hmm.
because certain part-timers work more than others.
Availability.
Correct.
Right.
We have some part-time, well, we only have 3 part-time officers right now. One works once a month. So that's not very useful if somebody were to call in or take
Sure.
2 weeks of vacation. Ideally, it'd be great if I could pick up a couple more that could give us more time. We have one of the 3. He's, like I said, he works 1 day a month. And then we have another one of our part-timers thinking about retiring because he's been here for a long time.
So it sounds like anywhere between 1 to 3 additional part-time officers on top of,
Ideally, I'd like to keep it around 4 or 5 part-time. I don't think we
Right.
need to go above that, but I might be able to get away with 3 if they're actually willing to work.
Okay.
And, it really depends on their schedule. Because one of the 3 part-timers that we have right now, he's working 2 and 3 days a week. He loves it.
you've
So-
had upwards of 9 to 12 part-time officers on staff before for years at a time. So
It
we've,
all depends on how much time they want to
Sure.
give us at the PD.
well, sure, and they're typically not here super long time. They're usually in and out after 6 months or something like that, so. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Mindy.
Well, and
Oh, that's
again,
fine.
these
No, it's
people are designed to backfill
Mhm.
when the regular full-time
Sure.
are off, so. Or for special events, that's what. So,
And we are anticipating that you are keeping your full-time administrative assistant
Yes.
for this coming year.
that's, cost is built into this budget.
Mhm.
So that left us with a total police budget of 1.4, almost 1.5 million, plus the equipment cost.
Under education and training, we have training, in parentheses, shooting range, and then in parentheses, prison-free question mark.
Yes, the chief wasn't aware that in this county, the prison allows their shooting range to be used by local law enforcement. So
Okay.
he'll be checking into that to use their facilities.
Just didn't like that we were mixing freedom from prison and shooting range in the same line item without explanation. So I was just curious what that was. It makes sense though, thank you.
Council have any other questions on the police budget?
I mean, do we want to address the what if of it all or just wait? The what if of it all, or should we just wait?
We've discussed it before. We know that if there's no deal, then we're gonna have to cut the police department in half.
Well, that's my point, though, is that we've never really discussed the specifics of it. I think we have a general idea if there would need to be massive cuts if we don't. But what does that actually look like?
Are we?
Should we know that now?
Are we have we done any pre-planning on that?
Yeah, we've talked about how that would work. We know that we would want to still staff the platoons at the village level. It would be almost exactly half of the current force.
We'd still keep a full-time admin, for example. If we go down to servicing the village and village only, do we still need a
No.
full-time admin? Okay. We still keep the SRO regardless. I think that's my understanding.
That's paid for by the
Paid for-
millage.
that's
right?
Exactly. So it's not a funding cost, but it is a question because we are then sending one of our officers to police outside of our jurisdiction.
If we don't patrol the township,
Mhm.
then no, we will not provide an SRO to the high school.
They will have to get their own SRO still with the millage, but
Correct.
their own
It
officer.
won't, yeah,
It will
we
not
won't
be a
have law
village officer.
enforcement power there.
It's, right, so it's not gonna be a village officer
Correct. He will come back to road patrol duty.
because you can't send them outside of our jurisdiction. Right, because we'll have no authority to, or any jurisdiction there. So no SRO from the village, just still be an SRO, but not from the village. Admin, you're at 4 full-time plus yourself plus sergeant. So assuming we're obviously not hiring 3 more full-time, 4 to 5 part-time in that situation, what do we retain of the other 6 that are essentially full-time at that point?
Well, if it comes to fruition, I would say we would still need 2 sergeants, 4 full-time officers, and probably 4 part-time,
Okay.
depending on what they can get to the time-wise.
Sure, to be able to staff it out and be able to space it out, have
Because
backups.
realistically, to provide 24-hour-a-day coverage,
Right.
you need 5 officers or 4.7 officers in minimum to vehicles.
Right, nobody can be 0.7 of a person, so it's 5.
Correct.
Right, gotcha, okay.
We estimated what the yearly budget would be in that case.
Again, it would be, a lot of it would depend on the actual officers because some of the costs are directly tied to healthcare, those sort of things. So it wouldn't take long to have it done.
Negotiations are going, I would start planning that.
All right.
Any other questions on the police budget? Any other questions on budget items previously discussed in the previous meeting?
Just a couple minor things. that-
Okay, go ahead.
Dale, can you just explain the DPW building garage purchase, what we're looking at there, what the plans are?
Sure. Actually, it's, as Brian will say, it's gotten a lot farther than it's ever gotten before. We have been budgeting for it. There's money identified and called out in the budget for that
Sure.
building. We know, we've done measuring, we know the size we're looking for. We know the reason why we'd like to select the lot that we're interested in. We've talked to the property owner where to build it. And last week, we met on site with a couple of engineers who are working on a site plan layout, some of the detail. They're looking for monies to help us grant-wise towards building that building, but it isn't stopping us from moving forward to getting a, for lack of a better term, a site plan so we then can begin the RFP process on the size building and the things we need or want in the building, like bathrooms, locker room, those sort of things. It's all been, hey, we got this picture of this really cool one from this engineering firm, and we went and looked at this one. So we've put all those wants, facts, likes, dislikes together, and now the engineering firm is generating for us it won't be a rendering, but it'll be a site plan for a future building.
Okay. In the budget, the line item for the 24-25 amended budget is 1.59. And then for this next year, I think it calls out $890,000 capital outlay between the DPW building and municipal parking lot reconfiguration. So does that 755,000 represent like the half and half that we've talked about before, that this would be funded over 2 fiscal years?
Yes.
And we still anticipate that that's a likely outcome?
Yes, and the fact that it seems like we're pretty accurate in the ballpark number between 1.2 and 1.5 for the new building. The property, the additional things in the site, if you recall, we were planning to install if you build it, they will come sewer line to access the factories along 53 that would go through this property to our existing sewer line. So they then, when they're ready, because several have asked, they could move towards actually seeing a reality of being able to access the village's sewer system. Potentially, we have no idea when, but it's good long-term planning.
So that number does include the real estate purchase itself?
Yes.
Okay, and the real estate seller is happy to sit back and wait while we
Yeah.
bureaucratically red tape the heck out of this to
And
wait a
he
while?
has said if somebody comes along,
Mhm.
because we've actually worked with that developer
Mhm.
and the Detroit Regional Partnership to do a big study of the industrial park. They paid to have flow studies done on the water, several items, the access to internet, all those things have been documented and loaded into a economic development system based in the Metro Detroit area for the region. So that property will get much more visibility than it's ever had before. And
By
while-
DPW moving there, you mean?
No, on behalf of the property owner of our industrial park to try and attract new business,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
marketing the property. So while all that's going on, I've been talking to the property owner saying, remember what lot we want. Yep, we're going to work with you. That's not a problem. We've got it locked in. So yeah, we're working with them and he has been very cooperative.
So what happens to the existing DPW site in this
That
hypothetical?
is really the exciting part, because we have people knocking on our door regularly to lease that property. So we'll be able to utilize that as a revenue stream towards the building project as soon as we get the construction.
Similar to our neighbors to the north renting out their DPW building now, right? Their old DPW, okay.
Well, but I don't think what do they put in there? A restaurant or something? We're probably not.
There's been different bidders for leasing their old
Yeah.
DPW building. Rental income is rental income as far as I'm
Right.
concerned, so.
Right. So it's been, I'm not surprised, but I am a little surprised how we have had regular people contacting us. Hey, can we rent space in that building? Hey, when are you going to be out? Type of thing. So Brian's getting sick of them stopping him all over the parking lot and all over the place and interrupting his day.
Well, the president needs office space.
There's a bathroom just down the hall.
Mindy, did you have any other questions?
Well, I don't want to take up all the questions if other people have stuff they want to talk about.
Please go ahead, Mindy, if you have any.
All right, this one I think is a simple one. I believe it was during our previous budget meeting, I requested that there's a line item for trees to be included in our budget. I did see in one of the street funds, there is a budget, but it references tree removal as opposed to tree planting. So I just wondered if that was an oversight or if that also would include some tree plantings. Or if I missed it somewhere else in this budget.
It's not ringing a bell that we put it in, so I'm going to ask Kim. Does that sound familiar to you?
We.
Repair and replace.
Repair and replace.
There is something about it. But I'm
No,
not,
it should be in the same line item as the
Removal?
removal.
yes. So we can certainly modify that now.
Yeah, so
That's
that,
what you guys are here for.
that was my request, is that we had quotes from American Tree. We weren't successful in getting the grant funding. My request was to just simply put that as a line item or include it in our existing budget for some trees. Every tree we cut down, 2 more,
Want two
Brian.
planted right over the sewer, or can we set it off to the side?
The right tree, at the right place, for the right purpose.
We saved the
can be
tree
done.
back here.
One, thank you.
All right, that will be in
Okay.
the final budget
Okay.
that you will receive on Tuesday.
I won't be here, so I'm gonna count on you guys.
It'll be in there.
Thank you.
Mindy, can you shed any light for us on parks and rec and why
Yeah,
we're once again decreasing?
if there weren't any other questions about
Oh, I'm sorry.
the
go ahead.
stuff that we already went over.
Sure. Apologies. Go ahead.
No?
Yeah.
Sure. So, hold on, Kim, do you have that part of the budget bookmarked?
It is page 33.
33. Yep.
Thank you.
I can
There we
tell you, if you don't mind me interrupting, that we had a outreach from the treasurer of the township to ask for an explanation on how we, through the DPW, bill the park fund for DPW's activities. I didn't watch the meeting from yesterday, but I understand that it was stated multiple times that why should we have to pay to have DPW maintain the park? They're there anyway. They're just sitting there drinking coffee. They can come out and take care of the park. So Kim spelled that out very nicely in an email to the board members, explaining that our guys, DPW guys, every minute of their day is charted and billed, as Commissioner Snyder said earlier, to charge the appropriate departments for their time. When we go over to unlock the bathrooms, clean the bathrooms, empty the garbage, there's a charge that is passed through. It's recorded on their time cards, whoever does it, and that charge goes back through to the parks budget. So
Yes, correct. So previously, I think you had seen like a $25,000 each contribution. And based on our representative from Park Board back to the township, did not feel like that was going to be successful. So we proposed what we thought was, a smaller bump that might be more acceptable. It does not sound like they were willing to approve the 17.5 that you see in our proposed budget here as of last night. As our manager mentioned, there were still some concerns. And I think a lack of understanding about billing that seemed pretty apparent when we were having our discussion at our last board meeting, that they didn't really understand that that's how municipal finance works, about you pull money from different funds all the time. That's just how it works. So I think that hopefully will be helpful to explain why they see those charges. And that's the purpose for them. And, I reiterated to the board many times that we're getting a really good deal from DPW. They provide full service for us in terms of weed whipping, grass cutting, fixing boards, putting up signs, like doing a whole host of things, cleaning bathrooms that we're not gonna, if we tried to bid every single of those items, it would not be the same level of service. So I've communicated that to the board, and they understand it's communicating back to the township, and hopefully they recognize that simply contributing the same amount of money over years and years and years, we've all seen all of our costs go up. So it only makes sense that this cost would go up as well. And we also have talked about there's many different projects that we want to do at the park, and those things cost money. So, we've got a little more communication yet to do, but that's why you saw that difference in number, so that it would be more, I think, easing them into a more realistic contribution to our parks.
Question, Mindy, I even heard at the township meeting last night, several projects being mentioned. If there's such a significant reduction in the already woefully underfunded park board, how would it be feasible that any of those projects would get done?
Very good question.
We're hoping on the give me money ferry to drop by.
Yeah, and so something that from the township side, they continue to reiterate is, will come to us and ask for money for each thing that you want to
Specific item.
do. Yeah, which is not very efficient and not how budgeting generally works. But, we hear that, and you'll also see here on the budget that there's foundation contribution, $215,000. So that's a really large number for our parks. That number is based on the redesign and refurbishment of the tennis courts. That just represents a quote that we had available at this time. We're attempting to get at least one additional quote. This is, I believe, the lower one that we have at this time. And then we'll be seeking grant funding.
So
to do that.
that's a grant that we're hoping to apply for to hopefully be successful.
Correct.
We're not going, that was my question because of what I heard. So there's plans to redo the tennis courts and to redo, and I went, and there's $0 for any of that. So it's kind of ridiculous to propose we're doing these wonderful things when we're refusing to fund any of them. Okay, I just want to make sure that there wasn't some gigantic pile of money that's going to be used to do those things that I wasn't aware of.
No, there is not at this time. And, like I said, I think there's some more communication that we'll need to do with the board to increase their comfort level with increasing our budget in a manner that we feel like we can make some real progress at the park.
Did you say they did not approve?
They did not.
17.5?
They did not.
They didn't approve nearly anything last night for their budgets. It was a little disheartening in that
Does that
regard.
mean we want to change ours to match, or do we just want to stay where we're at?
I would not.
We need to.
I would stay the course at the 17.5 would be my request from this board, is to, we've done it in the past where we've contributed more because we value the park and want to see improvements made on our side. We're hoping to lead by example previously, and we'll continue to do so. I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to mention here specifically. I don't know if there were any other questions.
Well,
about-
I guess just a follow-up comment, and that
Mhm.
you had mentioned, a lack of understanding of that this is the budgeting process and this is how budgets always work, so we take money from funds, but a little bit to a sympathetic understanding of their position on it is, however, we've never done our accounting like this. We've never done such strict and rigorous tracking and billing of each fund. And so the frustration they have with our police department numbers, the same that they have with our DPW and park numbers, the same frustration that DDA has with their numbers, because everybody feels like all of a sudden these charges are going through the roof. And in truth, they are going up significantly, but that's also because the general fund is no longer subsidizing the entire village.
Well, I think, they've always shown the DPW charges. I
Mhm.
think it was more asking for information, and so it was provided,
Mhm.
and then they're, wait a minute, what is all of this?
Mm-hmm.
So there was in our budget that we prepared, like a short list of smaller projects that we intend to do. So some of that information was provided, but we'll keep plugging away at it.
I don't see how we can continue to penalize the park and everyone who wants to use the park just because the township continues to be unwilling to contribute. It just seems irrational at this point.
Maybe at some point we request that they hand over their half to us. They have a ball diamond they've invested an enormous amount of money in. So maybe then we can invest our money in our park.
Be good for us to try and work together and see where we can get. But you are correct. There was significant investments made in the ballpark. So there it appears to be some interest in improving our facilities for our residents. So we hope to capitalize on that. And I'm going to continue to fight for us.
Well, we're an hour into reviewing what we've already previously gone through, so maybe it might be prudent at this time to move forward with the presentation. If anybody else has follow-up questions, we can get them at the end of the meeting.
So the next budget in the process would be 590, the sewer fund. The revenue sheet is pretty short and self-explanatory.
What page is that?
That
46.
is
46. Thank you.
45.
Thank you.
So 46 and 47 is our interpretation of the proposal from the private company for operating the wastewater treatment plant. It has the wastewater treatment plant's budget as proposed, and then next to it, the line items that represent the efforts or the what would be the effort in replacement of our efforts. Many of the costs carry over. The billing clerk for sewer carryover, the pension costs carryover. Many of those things just carry into both budgets. You'll see at the very end, there is oh man, it didn't show up on mine. There is a savings or a difference of $46,000 and change. Kim and I went over this budget several times. Then I asked the contractor to go over it with us to see if we were applying things in the right place. We actually had not applied some things I thought were covered in the proposal, so we had to go back and add them in. And I think we have a very accurate number at this point. So this is where I would think it would be a natural break to hear the presentation about the RFP we received. These guys are the low bidders. Infrastructure Alternatives is the name of the company. And I will introduce Sierra, who is their lead representative.
One-on-one, I have very little problem talking to most people, but I will admit, in front of groups, I don't really enjoy it. Just a quick introduction. My name is Sierra Brown. I am the Vice President and Director of our Operations and Maintenance Group. I've been with the company, come this October will be 13 years. I started as a lab technician in a wastewater treatment facility that we operate in Southwest Michigan, slowly, gradually working my way towards the position I currently hold. So there's much with water and wastewater operations that I've personally experienced. Very familiar with what our staff does on a daily basis. And that's, I guess, I mean, I can get about me all day if that's really what you want, but in the packet that I provided here, what I tried to do was give a summarization of our proposal that we put forth. The proposal we gave to you all was somewhat lengthy, very wordy. You try to paint a nice picture of who you are when you're trying to make an introduction to somebody that you haven't worked with in the past. Again, I could sit here and read this to you if you'd like, but we are a employee-owned company based in Michigan. Have approximately 85 employees and service somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 65 different utilities throughout the state of Michigan, both private and public, both municipalities and some food manufacturers as well. The founders of this organization were at like the tip of the spear when it comes to the services that we provide in the state of Michigan. I think it is important, you know, we do really focus on small to medium-sized utilities. It's something that we do every day. Our tenants, compliance is paramount to us. We'll do anything we feasibly can do to make sure that we are compliant in every facility that we operate. Customer service, we do view this as a service-oriented business. You are our client, and the client-service provider relationship can be very beneficial, I think, in many cases. We operate with integrity and efficiency. We'll be the first to tell on ourselves, to our regulators if something goes bump in the night and we have a black eye or stubbed our toe. We're certainly going to let those who need to know. The proposal here was, this table was provided to us by you all through the RFP. It's a bit confusing, and that honestly falls on me. It was somewhat of a short turnaround with the bid going out and coming back, but basically at the end of the day, that number that you see in the first year price at the bottom of that is labor, $25,000 a year maintenance budget, and with our services built into this 5-year agreement is also an assessment of facilities report. It's something that we try to give many of our clients out there. It's going through the facility stem to stern. We generally try to give ourselves at least 6 months prior to providing you with that report, just because there's not necessarily enough time to really, you don't want to go any shorter than that. It's hard to really find a lot of the gremlins and things like that in the facility in 3 months or something along those lines. We find that report helps our clients budget for the future with capital improvement plans, and gives you a good idea of what your regular maintenance costs are going to be and things like that. The next page is we had the pleasure of touring your facility. Again, it's very similar to many other facilities that we operate throughout the state of Michigan. This is a very well-educated guess, I would say, based on the level of effort and the amount of hours that would be applied at those specific topics or items. The following page, which I apologize is so small, it was a snippet that I took out of our proposal that appears much larger in the proposal, is just a brief representation of what we feel would be the best course forward for a transition. I've brought a couple of the gentlemen here with me today. Bill Blanchard is our operator in charge, our project manager just up the road in Marlette. He's been with us for almost 3?
As project manager.
Okay. He's very knowledgeable. He comes with many years of experience prior to coming on board with us, but does a very good job for us up in Marlette, and I feel like he'd be a great person to have here as part of a transition period. Tyler Pettit has been with us for a while up in Port Austin, more of a technical support piece for Bill, I think. Josh Menard, who is not listed here, is an area manager of ours that is really based in West Michigan, very close to where I'm at, but has offered to also help be part of this transition piece. You'll see here with this, we're also providing human resources, safety, and all of that as well. What we envision here is we'll be able to take off from day one. Myself, any of these gentlemen here, 5 days a week, somebody's going to be here for the first, probably up to 3 months for the first, every day. We have some staff that we would be able to help support this project that are based in Marlette that we've had discussions with. But we would, upon notification of award, we'd put a job posting out there. We would obviously entertain any and all applicants, make sure that we're, getting the best candidates possible, obviously, bring them on board, and then start to show them kind of the operations of the facility and make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible. Our operating philosophies here, again, we provide highly trained, motivated, and well-supported staff. We try to empower our facility managers. We do give people, we kind of go by the creed of this is your piece of the business. there are certain guidelines and ways that we do things. We feel that we have a good, firm understanding of not only what the regulations are, but also the expectations from the state of Michigan. Stay between those trees, but kind of run it how you see fit beyond that, along with obviously support from the rest of us. We do pride ourselves on being flexible and easy to conduct business with. If anything changes with staffing level needs out there or anything like that, we'd be certainly willing to sit down and have conversations about that. Again, we always strive for both being efficient and economical for our clients. It's in all of our best interest to get the most bang for our buck. And I don't know if you all do you have an engineering firm that you work with? Do you have in-house? We also work very closely with engineering firms throughout the state of Michigan. We found that developing that relationship on that side of the fence, when you have both your operations team and your engineering coming together with a well-vetted, thought-out plan, that can be very successful in many ways, and you don't have the two kind of bouncing back and forth. Again, I can just read all of this if you'd like, or I can just ask if you would have any questions for me.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
if you would, I could start out with a couple questions that might cue ideas for you
Yes.
guys.
Go for it.
Can you give us a comment about your image around the state? How are your facilities operating? What is your Eagle footprint? What do they say about you if we ask them?
I'd like to think, at the very least, they know that we're doing the best with what we have. I would say, in many cases, again, we strive for compliance, and we're not always successful with that. Even with a well-designed wastewater treatment facility, there's always going to be something. There's always going to be mechanical failure, human error. You can do your best, but there's always going to be something that goes bump in the night, right? I would say most of the facilities that we operate wouldn't necessarily be deemed as easy to operate in many cases. Some facilities that we operate that have more regular non-compliance issues, I feel, and it's easy for me to say this as an operator, are more of an engineering issue. And I know there's some engineers out there that might disagree with me, and I'd be happy to go back and forth with them on those things. But I do think we have, certainly in West Michigan, Northern Michigan, and I do believe in the thumb here, a pretty good reputation with the state of Michigan.
So how would you categorize our plant after you toured it? Would it be easy to operate?
I think you have an oxidation ditch, which personally is my favorite. That's where I kind of cut my teeth in the industry, was on an oxidation ditch. I think they're very robust. I think that it's a well homogenized treatment facility, right? You don't get a lot of spikes generally with those types of facilities. They will trend in the direction, and you just need to ensure that you're watching things so that you can steer them back in the direction you need them to go. It's been my experience.
Well, and when you walked through our plant, stop me if you want at any point, when you went through our plant, it's obvious, it seems obvious to me that we had an SRO issue that was dealt system where the sanitary and the storm were mixing.
Oh, okay.
And causing us to have overflows, so we had to install those huge reception
Yeah, those are large tanks.
tanks. You've got experience with those?
Not necessarily something like that, but certainly facilities that have large lagoons for purposes like that, right? It's nice to have that, as we call it, the wide spot in the pipe, because it's coming down, it's coming at you. You got to figure something to do with it. There's only so much you can treat at a time, specifically with the type of facility that you have. and remain in compliance. So I do think that's a very nice feature to have, and not all facilities that we operate have something like that.
I know that, I think it was Rowe Engineering designed it for us, and it went into place 20, 22 years ago. So it's been proven it works, et cetera. But I just wondered what your impression of it was when you saw it.
It's fantastic. It's a great thing to have. I guess my question would also be, though, is there any intent in ever remedying the issue with the collection system?
We've been doing that, and I'll speak for the DPW director. He's been lining pipes year after year. That's been a major effort of his. And I don't know what the result at the plant side has been, but I know that we've done several pipe lining projects. And then once we finish the major road projects you heard about earlier, that'll have another big impact.
Absolutely. And have you done any smoke testing?
Yes,
Yeah, see anything coming out of roofs?
yes. We have one subdivision that all their ground tiles tied into the
Oh, that's fun.
sanitary. And
Right.
I mean, we had interns do calculations on rain
Mhm.
coming off the roof into the ground, you know,
Good.
so.
It's a lot.
So in your proposal, how many people were you planning to, how many man hours were you planning to operate? What was it in your proposal? What did you?
It works out to approximately 2.5 people. And we're that's, as you stated earlier, there's no 1.7, I believe was your quote. But I do feel that that's something that we can do, again, with our close proximity with other clients like Marlette and Port
Contract
Austin.
seems to go really more hours per week than per person.
I'm sorry?
Your contract seems to really go more hours per week than per person. In the contract, it looks like it was 90 to 114 hours per week. It's a pretty enormous range.
Well, and
For staffing.
but if you look at that, that's going to be very specific to things that are seasonal,
Mhm.
right? There's going to be certain times of the year where it's going to be 2 people, and and they might be twiddling their thumbs, honestly, regardless of how much. That's when you really kind of pour yourself into maintenance and things that you can do inside, things like that, right? But when you're outside and the flows are really going, things like that, there are going to certainly be days where you're going to need more than just 2. And that's where you kind of land in the middle there.
Okay.
If there's any confined space entry with any tanks, you're not going to do that with 2 people. You're not going to, you need to have at least 3 people for that kind of stuff. So that's, again, they're averages, they're educated guesses based on what we saw and looking at your discharge permit and entering the facility.
If you're flexing hours and staff depending on days and what's going on, is there designated staff that's always here, or are you flexing people from around? the
Oh, we
area?
would designate staff here.
And then
certainly.
bring in the flex people as needed?
Yes. And also offer them the opportunity to also help support, that's, our philosophy is this with a lot of these smaller municipalities, right? When you only have a team of 2 or 3 people, that leaves you vulnerable for when the big stuff happens and it requires a larger team. We can, in most cases throughout the state of Michigan, we can have an army there within a couple of days. And when the big stuff the tanks need to be cleaned, or a lot of people really need to be there to get it done in a timely, efficient way to minimize the impact to compliance and all of that. That's kind of, I guess, our magic sauce.
Because you have to staff up to be able to do that anyways, right?
To be able to do what?
Well, for example, you said you'd have it staffed at all times. You're always going to have somebody there.
Absolutely.
You said you have 85 employees in 60 locations. That's
Yes, sir.
less than 2 per location right now. So you have to staff up just to be able to do that anyways, right?
Well, yes and no. And just understand too, when I say small, some of them are very small.
Okay.
There are some facilities that we stop in for 3 days a week, and that's it, and then we have others that we have 12 staff members, the city of Menominee up in the UP.
Right.
So, and it's kind of everywhere in between.
When you toured our facility, did you see anything, any efficiencies that might jump out at you? Or when you were asking questions, anything off the top of your head?
I actually had a conversation with Clinton about a couple of things that I saw there that I think would be beneficial, something to explore. And, you know, there's a capital cost with that. There's an upfront cost with those types of things. But we have a lot of people that are very experienced. We know the vendors, we know kind of who to go to, all of that, where we could help streamline that cost, I believe, considerably for you, because we've done it before. And, but the payoff for that, you know, with energy savings, chemical costs, sludge hauling costs, things like that, I do think you would get that back over, you know, a period of time. Might take 5 years in some cases, might take 10 in others. But I did see a couple of things out there that, as we toured the facility, I could see where there'd be large improvements to stability with more regular compliance. And I don't know the compliance record there now, but it's something as simple as you know, if I remember correctly, we talked about like a DO probe that would be tied to a 4 to 20 milliamp signal that would be sent to the rotor that would help to increase the speed of that rotor when it needs to increase and decrease when it needs to decrease. So you're not wasting that energy. And over time, that will pay for itself with the electric bill.
When you were looking at the facility, one of the things that happened is we had a simple human error that caused us to go out of compliance, which then drove a inspection from Eagle. They didn't say that that's why they came, but that's why they came. So they came through, did a detailed review of our facility. They changed the rating. It went from a C to a B.
Other way around. It went to the other way around.
Oh, other way.
It went from a B to a C, if I remember correctly.
And one of the things that came out, there was a list of things that they require us to do. I think we have most of them done. But did you see that list or no?
Maybe. I did. Actually, I did, yes, but I couldn't tell you what was on it. Not as I stand here today.
But it wouldn't, very likely things that you've experienced before.
Well, and yes, and you know, and it is a regulator's job to find those things. Quite frankly, right? I mean, that's the old joke is you leave an extension cord out when OSHA shows up so they catch that, you know, and I'm not suggesting that at all. What I am saying is they're going to find something. That's their job. And I do think one of the benefits that I've enjoyed working for this company is, again, because of the amount of facilities, the amount of operators that we have out there that are dealing with Eagle on a regular basis, we generally have a pretty good idea of what they're coming to look for by the time they get to us because of that. And it's almost on an annual basis where they, you know, a couple years ago, everyone needed a PIPP, a PIP. This year it was last year, it was not only thermal preservation of your ammonia and your phosphorus, but now they want chemical, and it's done like right there at the sampler. It's not like you grab the sample and you go back and do it. You have to do it right there, and it does state that in the method. But it's been going on that way forever, I could have a conversation with our regulators all day about that one. But you do tend to find those things out, again, because of the amount of facilities we operate. And again, that's where we, I think, have a very firm understanding of not only expectation, but the regulations because of that.
I have one last, maybe two questions before, or I'm hoping you're going to jump in and say something. This report you're talking about that you're going to do, the system
Assessment of facilities?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little more about that?
So generally what we try to do with that is we start where the system operations begin. So we go through the headworks, we do a detailed evaluation of kind of each piece of the treatment process, identify shortcomings, identify equipment that might need to be replaced and kind of try to give a life expectancy along with that. We have a few engineers on staff that help us go through that process. And at the end of that, once we've compiled all of that, we provide you in some cases, pretty thick booklet, but it does come with a table at the end that, kind of gives you some goals to shoot for budgeting purposes. Where, if you have X amount of dollars to spend on an annual basis for these types of, capital improvement, repair and replacement, those types of items, we can help kind of guide you and direct you as to where we would make the suggestion you best spend that money. Essentially, that's it.
So that report might tell us, just a thing that keeps popping up in my mind since I've been here is, I don't know if our plant is at capacity or if it's at 75% or if it's 5% over capacity. But if we needed to extend capacity because of new industrial development, because right now we don't have a PIP or a PIP, pre-treatment program. IPP program.
Yep.
Well, we may have one, but we don't have any plants, so we're not worried.
Mhm.
Would that report give us ways to open up?
We could certainly incorporate something like that. Now, to do that, there's the back of the napkin math on that, right? You look at your influent loading, the organic loading of it, the flows, and then what the design of the facility was. And you can kind of figure out where you're at with regards to what you're asking.
But could your analysis find ways to expand the capacity?
I would probably leave that for a process engineer. Just complete honesty.
I'm getting too far in the weeds, sorry. I'll kick it back to you guys.
Council, questions?
If you would like to go first, if you have any questions.
Yeah, so just to reconfirm, 3-month transition period where we have you, somebody else, and other members of your team staffing the plant while you look for new staff?
Would be to oversee the staff that would be hired to do it.
Okay.
Just to ensure that everything is the way we need it to be.
So would you bring operators in until the hiring process is done, or would you have the hiring process completed before you took over?
I would very much like to have the hiring process completed before we took over.
Okay.
That would be the goal.
And we'd have 2 minimum on duty most of the time. correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Dedicated to us.
yes.
In your responsibilities of the village bullet points within the contract,
Mhm.
it says, permit AI without charge of all equipment, structures, facilities, vehicles under the ownership and presently assigned to the facilities are specified for future equipment, construction specifications, et cetera, et cetera. I guess my question is this. So the village has purchased, my question is twofold. If a pump blows out and we're under your care, does the village pay for that or do you pay for that?
Village would pay for that pump.
Okay, so I've got 5 pumps I've got 2 pumps stored for emergency in my facility, and I have a pickup truck. So if Marlette's pickup truck blows a gasket, does that mean by you having use of our pickup truck that you can drive it to Marlette and give it to
No,
them?
we would never do that. No.
Okay, so our supplies stay here.
Yes, sir.
Wait, that's not what the contract says. That's in practice and theory, but that's not what the contract says.
This is,
Contractually,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, this is a sample contract. If there is any if we get to that point in the process and there is anything like that that you'd like to see, by all means,
Keep
we're
it out
open.
because I got like 36 more.
Oh.
got quite a few. Go ahead.
Okay.
That was my main question, so go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, Dale.
I just wanted to say, one of the things that hadn't occurred to me in this process was exactly what you just mentioned, an inventory. So a month ago, or no, it was about 10 days, 2 weeks ago, I asked Clinton, do we have an inventory of the items in and around the facility. And he has been now updating, creating a detailed inventory. So if in fact something like this were to move forward, we would have a list of what we have on the shelf, how many, how many eyedroppers to how many pumps, sort of a thing. So just so you know, that wasn't in my original thoughts, but then it came up at some point and I put it on the list, and we're going to be prepared with an inventory.
I won't go through all 10 pages of my questions, but there are some significant ones I want to hit on. Many of the services are listed as upon request, but there's no clear pricing in there. Is that something we could expect to change, or were you?
That is something that would be if upon request, the pricing for those services.
Okay.
Anything outside of the scope.
And I mean, there's already an addendum, so we're modifying potential contract terms before we're even starting. Is that just because the model was sent and then you did the tour, or well, I'm just curious why there was addendum number 1 on top of this?
That was my fault, because when we're looking at it, I'm thinking things are coupled in one budget when in fact they weren't. So I needed to make sure that lift stations were included in their maintenance.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Also, just if I may, my interpretation of that addendum as well is that you were looking for precisely what we gave, which was a labor proposal with that maintenance fund put in with it as well. And all costs associated with that labor as well, which I will say, with everything that's happened over the last couple of years with the cost of anything, I do think that's extremely advantageous for both parties. It becomes very squirrely when we're trying to budget for, we don't know what's going to happen with chemical costs and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's look at what page is that? I'm not sure what page it is of yours. It's page 81 of our packet, section 103, the $25,000 annual maintenance allowance. So village pays all expenses, but they're invoiced at cost plus 15%, right?
Okay.
So after the village spends $25,000, then IAI starts paying. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. So
Within this agreement, the way we have it laid out, essentially whatever $25,000 is divided by 12, you'll be paying that along with the cost of labor here.
Okay.
We then, in many cases, what we do is we set up a meeting with either the manager or council. You tell us where you feel comfortable. Is there a certain price point that you'd like us to stay under? Or if anything goes above that, would you like us to present to you? In many cases with these maintenance budgets, it's for expendables. We got to run to the store and grab this or grab that, we give we can provide you a detailed quarterly, monthly, however you'd like to see that expenditure to show you what that looks like as we go through the year. But then once that 25,000 has been expended, then yes, we'd be coming to you with those.
right. So it's a for-profit corporation. Why would you minimize maintenance costs when you get a 15% markup?
There will be no 15% markup on that $25,000.
But it begins after the 25.
Yes.
That's my
Anything
point.
that comes through us, which I would never ask you to do. That's just in case we ever find ourselves in a situation where you're asking us to purchase something on behalf, again, said pump that we were discussing earlier. If you want us to buy that, unfortunately, it would come with a 15% markup. It'd be far more beneficial for you all to purchase that.
Purchase it ourselves,
Yes.
which there's obviously an incentive for us not to, and there's no restriction on us doing that.
No.
Okay, just making sure. I believe that. I didn't see it that way. I just want to make sure. But so for the utilities, electricity, natural gas, internet, stuff like that, it's only budgeted at $1,500.
No, and again, that's where I apologize there at the beginning. When I put that table together, that is essentially the cell phones for our staff.
Okay.
Is what that is.
All right. I was going to say, obviously,
And I
actual
can go
utility
through that
costs
as
would
well,
blow that budget
'cause-
immediately.
Because this is going to get really confusing.
Okay.
So then the 9,012 that you see underneath there, that miscellaneous expenses there, that is annual travel expenses for people like myself, others, and that the startup staffing and the expense that we will incur in-house for developing that assessment of facilities report, spread out over 5 years.
Okay, all right, so, well, we're on to that one, the solids transportation and disposable, it's not included, correct?
No.
Okay, why is lab supplies only at 9,012?
And again,
Is that
it's not,
vastly underestimated?
it's not lab supplies.
Okay,
That's what I was just discussing. That is the miscellaneous
that's
expenses.
that same miscellaneous that
Yes,
you're.
that's what I was saying before.
Gotcha.
I
That's the
apologize.
travel one.
I should have been
Travel.
I should have not tried to fill boxes and just put it all into one.
Understood. No, that's fine. As long as you're clarifying what that was, because that seemed vastly underestimated.
It is.
Okay. All right. So section 1.05 then, the non-routine services, anything beyond standard services costs extra at cost plus 15%, right?
You're looking at 1.5 non-routine services?
Yeah.
Where are you looking? I'm sorry.
And 1.05, section 1.05 on page, well, like I said, it's
Yep.
section 2 of your agreement.
Yep.
Yep, and so it's supposed to be standard services, or excuse me, anything beyond standard services was the cost plus 15%. Is this where I saw this? It was my note said. Might have.
That section there would be anything non-routine
Right.
would be at our standard extras rate is what we have.
And so what is that standard extras rate?
Currently, it's $80 per hour.
Okay, $80 per hour. All right, but we don't really define routine versus non-routine or standard versus non-standard very much throughout here. So do we get?
I believe we laid that out in our scope of services in the proposal, would be what the standard or routine services would consist of.
And so 1.07 on liaisons. So if a village employee makes an error, IAI is not responsible, and it shifts liability back to the village. Is that correct?
The liaison section, I always thought was just like who we're going to identify, which in this case I thought would be Dale, the manager.
Well, I guess let me ask that more broadly and generically. If a village employee, because you're throughout the contract, it's IAI can rely on the village's representations to regulatory agencies, right?
Yes, we would act as a liaison to the regulators, yes.
And so in that concept, if a village employee makes an error in its representation to you that you're then relying on, IAI is not responsible. We indemnify you from that responsibility. Is that correct?
Yes, that would have to be a case-by-case basis. I'm not following.
Okay. Well,
I don't know if, for instance, where we would have a village staff member do something that would create a situation that would put us into non-compliance.
well, I'm not going to try to hypothesize the hypothetical of what that circumstance would be, but we do a lot of indemnification throughout the contract, which isn't abnormal, but I'm trying to figure out exactly why it's there in that application as well. So we're indemnifying you for anything you rely on from a village employee, but it's really just shifting liability back to the village when the village is actually retaining you for the expertise in the first place. So it's just, it's circular for me. And that's why I'm kind of trying to understand that, that indemnification of liability from your point of view as well. I'm trying to understand why it's there in such a fashion.
It's the template we've had for years. I don't, and again, I know that is a sticking point for people, and we have gone through negotiations with our legal team and our clients as well to ensure that everyone feels good about that piece.
And so what you're saying is plenty of these terms, that one included, is potentially negotiable. The
I would
liability.
say just about anything's negotiable.
Okay, all right. We already talked about the variance in the hours for staffing. That, table number 2, it's page 60 of our packet. What page is that for you?
Table 2 is the breakdown of hours.
So the FTE, just that, just let me see that. Sorry, I apologize. 1 second. The let's see that table here. Site. It doesn't show minimum staffing requirements, but you already mentioned the 2. Is that something we could expect to get into the contract?
If that's what you'd like, yes.
Okay.
We could do that.
Let's see so the annual increases that
Yes, sir.
are built in.
Yep.
So year 1, 306,057, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Year 5, $341,144. Is that still correct?
Yep.
Okay. So that's an 11.5% increase over 4 years before inflation adjustments, which, as you just mentioned, these last few years,
Yep, it's been nuts.
been a little nuts. So that baked in increase over a 4-year period before inflation, it could be significantly higher. So council be aware of that.
I would just point out to that, let's get to section 3.03 with the annual rate adjustment.
Yep.
If you read that section there, again, if I'm not mistaken, on that table, I put 3% in there as kind of a placeholder,
Okay.
right? That term there, 3%, whichever is greater, and mutually agreed upon between the client and infrastructure alternatives.
I was going to bring
We
that up.
100%, again, we are we are not a nonprofit organization for sure, right?
Right.
But we're also not here for you to give us all of your money so that you can't fix
Well, you
things.
service
You know what I mean,
nonprofits,
right?
yes,
Yeah, our position is this. We have many clients, and if you look at that proposal, that stretch 15, 20 plus years. The reason that we have those clients for that length of time is because of things like that.
Okay.
We truly try to develop a partnership with the communities that we serve. And I don't know how to express that any other way than maybe feel free to reach out to some of those names and numbers in there if you have concerns over that. I would highly recommend that. We really truly want to be a part of the community if we're going to be part of this.
Well, on that topic then, to just be bluntly putting it, you said you have 60 to 65 different municipalities. Why cherry pick 10 that you select to give to us then?
We felt that those were the facilities that really,
Mirrored.
yeah, I mean, close enough,
Sure.
right? Yeah,
Okay.
no, it would be a good representation of what we're proposing to do here.
What's your average retention rate then of these municipalities?
I have no idea what that is, honestly. I don't.
Okay.
I mean, there are many, some go because they decide they want to do it themselves. It's a very competitive world that we live in. We
Sure.
have lost due to, they go out to bid every 3 years and
Right.
the cheapest bid's going to win.
And I'm not as concerned with those who have gone from public to privatization and then just switch contractors for what they think may be a better deal.
Yep.
I'm more concerned with those that go from public to privatization and say this isn't for us and try to go back public.
And that's happened.
At what extent do you think?
I don't know that.
Okay.
But, and it hasn't happened. I haven't experienced that
Sure.
personally,
Okay.
but I do know that has happened.
Okay. If it's not one you've experienced, then I won't go down that road any further because I don't want to waste anyone's time. But so you get an overhead profit year 1, $63,000 approximately, right?
Again, that's not just profit. That is
overhead
overhead
and
expenses. Yes,
Overhead
that's
and
all baked into there, yes.
So, but that's about a 20% markup on costs, plus a 15% markup on all maintenance, plus a 15% markup on additional services. From those earlier ones we were going through.
Okay.
Those are all potential circumstances, not necessarily guaranteed.
Right.
But we can find ourselves in all three of those extra categories.
And what I would suggest is if we find ourselves in extra categories more often than not, then we should come back to the table and figure out a lump sum price so that you aren't paying $80 an hour.
Sure. Okay. It's just, it's theoretically possible to
Absolutely
end up
is.
there in this multi-year contract where we're extras.
But I would think through communication with the board and the village manager that we would work towards alleviating that cost. And if we see something that's going to be continually reoccurring, we can just budget for that.
You were talking about additional services. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like additional services are more requested by you guys. They're not something that are just going to happen. Typically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're not going to be something that every week we're going to be
Sure.
in that range, in that realm
They're-
of additional services.
They're unpredictable, which is the nature of my concern.
Well,
That's a
Well, they can be. I mean, they can certainly be.
Right.
And that would be up to us. I mean, so again, we have these budgeted hours in here, right?
Mhm.
What we attempt to do at every opportunity we get, Port Austin, for instance. Somebody's on a call out in the middle of the night. If there is the ability for that person, they're out five hours in the middle of the night. If there's the ability for them and all of our responsibilities have been met and or other staff can help aid through that, that person can kind of peel out early that week. They stay at 40. They get that time that they did in the middle of the night at time and a half overtime, which we have budgeted in here for, and that's where that overhead number and that bottom line, there's cushion there for those kind of things. We understand what we do.
Sure.
We will strive to minimize that additional cost to you while maintaining the facilities and maintaining what we have contractually obligated ourselves to do prior to charging extra for that.
Okay.
If it starts to become a reoccurring theme and things start to get well beyond this and any way of achieving all of that, what we have contractually obligated ourselves to do, that would be, again, that time that we'd like to sit down with you and start to discuss. This isn't what we thought it was because of X, Y, and Z. Are we open to talking about an increase or another way, or can we get something fixed so this stops happening? Those types of conversations would happen.
Amending the contract or making other types of changes to.
Or amending the scope and then the price with
Sure.
that.
You can see why for a for-profit company that's hard to understand or hard to fathom, because you surely get great customer retention that way. You also reduce your profits that way. So
Yeah, no, but we also, we run very skinny margins in our
Okay.
business. It's the only way we can remain competitive.
okay,
It really, truly is. It is not a large profit margin business, what we do.
I believe that. Was I reading that right in section, was it 109, I think, that village remains liable for PFAS contamination, is that correct?
That is something, yes.
All right, so you guys operate the plant, but we remain liable for the PFAS contamination, right?
Yep, if it's in the stream, right?
Okay. But so you have no responsibility for detecting it or preventing it, so.
Well, there's certain technologies that you need to have for
Mhm.
preventing it, and or you need to go out in your collection system, identify where it's coming from, and through what I hope is the use of a well-vetted ordinance, be able to pursue getting that shut down.
Okay. I'm not familiar with whether or not we do. Can you?
Yeah, we have zero detect for PFAS. We haven't had an issue with it. At the same time, it would be, I think, very easy for us to determine where it came from if we were to have it. Because again, we're familiar, it's not a huge community.
Sure.
And tracking it through the system. I've been through PFAS
Sure.
at the nuclear level. And we're in a great spot here. We don't have it. I don't even know, Clinton, did they say we don't have to test for it again? Because we've tested zero.
Well, they keep updating the rules on a year-by-year basis.
So
I just wanted to know the detection
It's an
equipment was there.
ever-evolving thing.
But yeah, so that we are on the best side of PFAS that we can be on.
So who's running those samples though, at this point, in this hypothetical? But they're not,
We would be collecting them for you, but it'd still be going out to a private laboratory.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's either
For
gonna be the
analysis.
state or a private lab.
Yes.
hence the detecting part of just how are we going to detect it then and that clarifies then. So it's still sample collection is on you guys, but private lab is going to be telling us.
Yes.
Okay.
What
all right.
that result is.
All right. Like I said, the indemnification stuff is a little concerning to me. It's what we would in my line of work refer to as an adhesion contract. It strongly, heavily indemnifies for IAI, not so much for the village. It's a little bit reversed, it's a little bit slanted, but that's not unusual for a contract like this. But it's except for, just so the rest of the council's aware, it's except for negligence or willful misconduct, and those are just very high bars to prove legally. So it's setting the bar very, very high, which would contractually be normal in this type of language, just so everybody's aware. But the property rights, all records remain village property, but there's no real mechanism kind of explained anywhere in this process for how we ensure the knowledge transfer to work. Can you explain how that typically works, how our records and our knowledge-based system is kind of transferred over to your employees, and should we ever leave, how that transitions back? I just want to know the logistics of that process.
In a best case scenario, there would be a transition that would take some time.
Okay.
A week, a month, 3 months. We've been through that before. On both coming in and going out. I think it's extremely advantageous for you to get that. Now, have we been thrown the keys and said, here, figure it out because we're leaving? Absolutely. We've 100% had to do that before.
Right.
It's not a fun process. It's all hands on deck and you work through it.
I mean, that's certainly what I hope is not the case here. I just wanted to make sure.
Well, and we will own the computer, so that information will stay with us.
Right, that's kind of what I was getting at. We retain the records, we retain that information during this process. I understand that. My point is but it is also still accessible to them, so there's not a knowledge and information gap between the municipality and the private contractor. That's kind of what I'm getting at is if we're retaining all that knowledge, how is it accessible to them? So that they know what we know for our plan. That's what I'm.
My experience is just there's been that level of transparency that we just have access to that, so that we're aware of it.
Okay. All right. Through that. Insurance, just real quick. So Village of Elmwood gets listed as an additional insured. The coverage amounts just seem a little bit low for environmental liability. Is that pretty standard, that number that you got in there?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, we have altered this with some clients that we have.
Concerns?
Yeah, yes, and again, we'd be more than willing to entertain that as well and figure out what that might look like if there's concern there.
I'm just used to seeing higher ones when we're talking about environmental concerns, so I was just curious.
Well, and I'd like to add that we have asked our insurance company, liability company, is there a reduction in our regular rate? Because if this company took over, they have this level of insurance. And I'm sure they will say, yeah, maybe there is or isn't, but if it was 2 million or 5 million versus 1 million, we would give you a discount. So we could look at a cost benefit analysis for having them have more insurance beyond what is listed here.
So you've asked, but you just don't have
Haven't
the
got
answer
the
yet.
answer yet, right.
I'm not sure that they will do that, but I mean, it's certainly a possibility that they'd be willing to reduce. Okay. So I think I know the answer to this just from my experience with it before, but why isn't sludge disposal included in the base price?
My interpretation of the amendment that we received was it was excluded from the bid process.
Let me ask the old, why were we intentionally excluding it?
I didn't hear the first.
The sludge disposal, why is it not included?
Because that's something we take care of. We have a contract with the company, and I couldn't imagine they would want to somehow all of a sudden find a company to handle our sludge. It's actually supposed to be emptied soon, last week, this week, next week, but it's something that we have a process in place.
Sure, I'm aware. I remember going through the bids, and we stuck with the same one for quite a while. I guess what I'm asking is why we intentionally don't want that included, just because we want to maintain that relationship and continue to handle that ourselves?
Well, at this point, if we get through it this year, so we have a year to fill up again, let's say, we would be able to talk to the incoming company. We already have our own process in place, and we'd be able to learn, if they said, hey, we can get their sludge disposal for half the price of what you're getting,
I was just going to stop you there. There used to be a time where we could have worked with sludge haulers, chemical vendors, things like that because of the impact that we have in the state. Those days are gone. Those guys, we just don't have that ability any longer. We used to be able to negotiate those things and because of our presence, but that's just no longer on the table from most vendors that we've ever discussed with. And then again, for us to throw a budget price in there, we need to hedge our bets, right? So it's, in my opinion, you maintaining costs like that, electricity, all of those types of things, I think it's just a much better, if you don't spend it, you keep it.
Right.
And if I give you a price that says we're going to cover that, I'm going to ensure that we're going to cover it. And
right, and we're going to pay it because
that's
right. The point of it. I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I'm not even suggesting that I wanted it. I just was really curious what the intention was.
And hauling is being done, the closer it is, it's something that happens right around here. It's not like we're, taking it to Rockford to spread it. It's an established thing. So it's tricky to set up, and I didn't want to take a chance of it not being there.
Sure, that makes sense. So we, throughout the contract a couple different times, referring to emergency versus routine. So who's going to define emergency versus routine? How are we defining the difference between emergency situations?
Are you talking with regards to charges, or are you talking with regards to what our staff will be incurring?
Both.
Okay, with regards to, again, additional charges, we will do the best that we can to manage around that and not have to send you an additional invoice. Okay. And in most cases, we're successful with that. But again, if there's something that is a reoccurring issue that we're unaware of when we put together a proposal that we did not budget for, that is going to take a level of effort that will supersede our ability to do that, plus all of the requirements that we will have at the facility, that's when I would like to sit down, as opposed to just starting to send out multiple invoice after invoice. Can we talk about expanding this agreement beyond what we currently have it budgeted for?
Sure. Now, that was essentially more as to, that wasn't as to necessarily the staffing, right?
I'm sorry?
It wasn't necessarily as to the staffing,
No,
right?
that was, so our staff, generally, we ask our plant managers, our facility project managers, you want to come up with a schedule, Monday through Friday, what hours? And in many cases, we do that based on what the office hours are here, because you don't necessarily want a complaint coming in and, guys come in at 6 a.m. and they're done at 2:30 in the afternoon, or whatever that works out to be, and you guys are still open for 4 hours or 3 hours or whatever that is, and then somebody gets called in. That would be after hours for our employees. That would be a call out. That would be paid at time and a half to those employees. So we do our best to mimic the hours of operation of our clients so that we're all kind of on the same page with regards to that. But I would say generally you're talking about, Monday through Friday, 7 to 8 in the morning to 4 to 5 in the afternoon. Saturdays and Sundays would be after hours as well.
I feel like that's substantial enough an answer to get where you're going with it. I guess it's still, by definition, what defines emergency? What's going to define routine?
A call out after hours.
Okay.
An emergency condition that needs response, immediate response, that cannot wait until we come back the next day.
Okay. So maybe some better defining inside of the language, but that's reasonable enough to fix. It's not that big of a deal. If I see somewhere earlier on, I made a short note about this, but I didn't get it. You cite only 2 minor violations in 25 years. Is that what I think I saw that somewhere in?
That's with regards to fines that we've incurred due to issues that were oversights, I would say, on our part.
The only reason I ask it that way is because then earlier on, when you were responding to some of the questions, you were saying certainly it's difficult to stay in compliance with some facilities. So, but that's on.
That is compliance with the discharge permit, and I should say, discharge permit is very large. There's a lot more to a discharge permit than just the table with the lab data that you're collecting on a 3 or 5 day a week basis, right? But when I'm referring to keeping a facility within compliance, when I'm really talking about earlier, what I was describing is the daily, weekly, monthly compliance of a facility and the constituents of what's leaving in the effluent.
Sure. Okay.
Those items that were there, one was a brand new lagoon that was brought into service, and the effluent valve for the new lagoon was not closed. So, I mean, that's just one example of that, right?
Sure. Okay, I get what you're saying.
And those are situations where a fine was incurred.
Okay. I think I'm done giving you a hard time. So
No, that's
if anybody
fine.
else has any questions.
Council, anybody else have questions?
The only question I still have, I think Stephen covered a lot of ground there, was that understanding in terms of the contract, day-to-day operations, even emergency situations. But in terms of the capital improvement plan or repairs that something breaks and you need to replace something. Currently, our staff would obtain quotes and get all that information, prepare a report, work with the manager, bring it to council for approval. Where does the burden fall if you're a contract operator?
It wouldn't need to be any different than that.
Okay.
I would say that's generally how we operate many of the facilities that we oversee. Unless it's something that our operators can take care of themselves, right? I mean, and in that case, there needs to be a certain confidence level, and you certainly don't want, from a risk standpoint, that to start to get into some sort of liability, things like that, right? I mean, so we all need to be comfortable with certain things. And again, that's where I think items like your maintenance budget that are baked in there. If we can go out and buy a $400 or $500 piece or a part that's really relatively easy to replace, well, we would just do that. Unless, again, you would prefer that any and all of those expenditures or up to a certain dollar amount or something like that comes before board. But that's generally how we operate is, yes, we'll find something. Unless it's an emergency, too. That's another situation that we've come across as well. Something goes boom in the middle of the night and you got to get it fixed, or you got to get a pumper truck out there to get water moving. You have to make that call. It's one of those ask for forgiveness situations. I'm sorry, but the alternative is not acceptable.
Sewage on the ground.
Yeah, it's just not acceptable. So we're going to do it. And I will plead for our forgiveness, but we have to get it done. We do everything we can to be as proactive as possible, try to stay ahead of items that we see coming up, make sure that we seek out as, and some of our clients, again, when you build a relationship, they trust your decision-making process, and they'll say, you just figure out who can get it fixed, who you trust getting it done, get it taken care of, let us know what it's going to be. We have others that minimum of 3 bids, and then you bring it before council. And we're willing to do whatever you would prefer in those situations.
One thing I wanted to touch base on that Councilman Snyder mentioned earlier, any big purchases would be done by the village because we don't want to pay tax on them. So we're going to always want to be in there in advance so that we can save that money. They're not a tax exempt entity, so we would want to do that.
Anybody else on council?
Yeah, I had one question. What's your guys' experience with like working with municipalities like DPWs, like instead of like contracting out certain like work that needs to get done? If it's like a smaller fix, usually like to save money, we like to use our DPW when possible. So like, what's that? I don't know if I missed it in the contract, but
No, we're certainly open to that, right? I mean, there's a certain, you maybe use somebody like that as an extra set of hands, but maybe not in there. Again, you don't want that liability or that risk associated with that. But if somebody can help you and you have trust and faith in those individuals, things like that, absolutely, be more than willing to do that. We work in many different communities, right? We have facilities that we operate, from cradle to grave. Water comes in, distribution system, collection system, wastewater plant. And we do some that we actually operate the DPW as well. But in most cases, we are working with the DPW out there with, if there's something with the collection system and they have certain equipment or somebody that can help us, again, if you're entering a confined space even. Again, we provide that training. We'd be happy to provide that training to the DPW staff here so that everyone's comfortable with that to help limit that expense for sure. But yeah, we're always open to that.
I think Councilman Snyder asked the questions that I had written down.
Sorry to steal your thunder.
Quite all right. Thank you.
Do you have any other commentary, Dale?
Well, I want you to know that when you look at the budget breakdown, the way we did it, we went back over it and back over it to ensure that we weren't overestimating what was included in the contract so that the numbers were absolutely representative of what we would see in the end. There's buying pieces of equipment, they're represented in both sides of the budget. So I just wanted you to know that we went over it and over it because of the way it was represented in the chart. We had some of it wrong in the beginning, and Sierra pointed out that, where he said lab was actually cell phones. So we got that all corrected, and it's very accurate now. We've been over it multiple times to make sure that it's correct.
Thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely.
We appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you.
With the presentation completed, Dale, do you want to continue with the remainder of the budget presentation?
Yep. The next budget is water fund. You can see again, the revenues are pretty self-explanatory. There are some proposed projects that have been on the list for a while. It includes staff salaries, the usual things. a commercial backflow program is being looked at because we are, and a regular residential backflow program is being considered because we just got notice that we might have to put something like that in place. But this budget has basically the usual stuff, water tower maintenance, all the things that you're used to having in the water fund. The last fund is the equipment fund. And it starts out with the police car purchase, the fitting of the police car. There's contribution in that revenue from the contract that we would settle or have with the township. So that is a good thing on the revenue side. The Ford Explorer on the next side, we talk about its cost at $44,000 plus $20,000 to outfit it. And then the rest of the expenses are basically the liabilities that exist already for the equipment that we have. And that concludes the budget.
Water tower maintenance, do we know what year we were in on that? Because it was like a 10-year contract.
It's almost over.
4.
You don't need to answer tonight. You can follow up with an email on that one because I know it's late. I was just wondering if it's getting close, if we should be looking to renew or seek bids.
I want to say we're in either year 4 or 5.
That was the 10-year, wasn't it? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
We just met with that representative and I'm sure he would have brought it up if there was an issue.
Does anybody from council have any additional questions on the budget? Mr. Village Manager Kerberson, do you have any?
Kind of budget related, but I wanted to make sure you were aware because it's happened 5 minutes before the council meet or before this workshop. We received a email that was a copy of a lawsuit being filed by Kingsbrook Mobile Home Park because they had received an email from me reminding them their water bill was due and they had to pay it or we were going to shut them off in the morning. So we have been sued with a temporary restraining order to not shut them off. Our attorney is aware of it. We will be meeting, he will be following up on it in the court first thing in the morning to see if I need to be there or if Kim and I need to be there to discuss anything with the judge regarding the requested temporary restraining order. I will wait. I will have Brian wait to shut off the water until we finish that visit in the court. But
Can you ask the judge to have them pay their bill on time?
yeah, that would be nice. And fortunately, we know that it won't be something new to that court. So
That hearing is already scheduled for the TRO?
no, it got mailed or sent in today at 5 o'clock.
Sure, that's
So-
when they gave you notice, but they had to schedule a notice of hearing, so.
Well, and I don't know that they were able to do that because the document we got is so poorly scanned, you just can barely read it. So Mr. Gildner's going to follow up on it first thing in the morning.
Okay.
He sent me a text just before the meeting started that said, there is no TRO. So it hasn't been to court, but I believe it's set up for tomorrow morning.
Correct, they had to file, give notice first, then seek their TRO. It's gonna take a little while, but I just wanted to know if they'd already scheduled their notice, and they may have, and they just not served you with it yet, so.
And what I can tell you is the bill is over $80,000. So we need them to pay it.
Yeah, it's pretty standard.
So how far behind are they?
That's 3 months.
So that's 3 months.
That's their quarterly billing, yeah.
So previously, prior to shutting off, discussions of shutting off water at the Kingsbrook, it did come before council to make that decision. Just don't know if that was just courtesy for us or because it affected a large number of residents. Just curious why that was not brought to our attention.
I wouldn't, this is not it's directly management related item. I would have never even thought to bring it to the council because, day-to-day management is the type of thing I would do. You certainly would be notified. So
Prior
asking-
to or after the fact? Would we be notified prior to it being shut off or after the fact?
prior to or at the time, I thought I sent an email out last night saying that.
I got it, but I don't know if you just sent it to me. You should send it to full council.
Just sent it to him. Yeah, I didn't get it either.
Okay, well, anyway, I just treat it like any other shut off. It's just because it's a big one that, it's gotten our attention. We've given it a one day delay beyond the shut off because they have, over the last several months, they have repeatedly tried to tell us we're not billing them. They've solicited different people to attempt to convince us that we're not properly billing them. But in the end, to answer your question, it's not something I would have ever brought to council to weigh in on because it's not a if or not. We can't give away water. It's called out in the charter. And in this case, their shut off was due. And they're
Correct.
very, very familiar. They have tried to get me to any number of things since I've been here. Delay, reduce, eliminate. And each time nope. Pay your bill. So.
Did we make a change that we can put that on their taxes, Kim? So
And a
we
letter
can
did-
get
and
our
a letter
money.
did go out that if it wasn't paid by the 13th, that would be rolled over in their taxes.
So we would be making whole. And
In a year.
yes,
It's selective enforcement too, though.
correct. And I mean, I'm just questioning it because it came to council before. Like we debated it. And I
Come to
feel
coun-
that it is because,
It's come to council before, but it gets to the point,
Agreed.
it gets to the point where we can debate it, and for 20 years, we've debated it and given them the doubt of it, and it's to the point where they're playing games every month to pay the bill, so.
I don't disagree with the history. There was a time, 2016 to 2020, right in that range, all water-related issues came before council, and we said enough is enough, and we said this is in the manager's discretion, and we turned it over and said you do not need to bring these to us. It is up to them. But then the park was the only one that continued to come back before us because the managers over those periods of time were concerned about shutting off the water to that number of residents, which in and of itself it becomes selective enforcement. We do shut it off for any other non-payer, and we intentionally don't shut it off for them, which means, and when we don't shut it off, we weren't serious about it, they didn't pay. And I remember I asked the very same question the very first time, right after Dale took over. His very first thing that he did was pay it, or tomorrow morning I shut it off. Surprise, surprise, they paid their bill for the first time in full timely the next day. That hasn't happened in 20 years. I mean, they're actually paying
I would
timely.
disagree, like, for the first time ever.
They've been
Just
paying
am
timely?
asking, I just have asked the question why we sort of broke from what we have done before. And I do believe it's because it affects the residents that had no choice in the matter, who are many elderly, low income, have limited resources.
Sure.
There was an issue of public safety.
Sure.
If there was an emergency, could we provide firefighting services? There was a whole host of issues.
Sure.
That's why I bring it up. I feel that's why it merits a little more discussion, but That's my opinion here.
And I don't disagree with that. And my only counter to that is that's exactly how the park has taken advantage of both sides and both parties, because we wouldn't enforce our own rules and they would take advantage of it because they know we were going to be unwilling to do it. And the second that we were willing to do it, payments started to roll in more timely. I'll at least put it that way. I don't know their full payment history, so maybe there was previous timely payments before that practice, but
They got better.
Mr. Dyke, if I could add something to that, I need everybody to remember, they are our number one water user. They are the number one, and they mismanaged their end of everything. They took all their meters out of their homes. They have nothing to compare the bill to. Every billing period, they say, well, how did you come up with this number? It's what our meter says, but they cannot come up with a comparison because they no longer read meters in their own community.
You have one master meter.
Yeah, but they used to meter every home, and they don't do that no more. They removed them all. They told us flat out, we removed them all. And then they raised the water rates on, or lot rent on.
They've raised it repeatedly year after year.
Yeah, but moving forward, it is our number one water customer. They use approximately 1 million gallons a month. I mean, we're busy keeping water in there all the time. So
just to back up, the other thing that I have reminded, we've worked with the residents there. We've tried to put them in touch with people who can help them with this issue, that the property owner collects the money in advance and then doesn't pay the bill. But the catch-22 is they're not our customer. He is our customer. So that's who we laser focus on. And this is a new tactic. I'm sure, I hope it will not last the day tomorrow. So, and we won't shut them off because the result will be the court order to pay the bill by the end of the day kind of a thing. I hope.
Do I?
Anything else, Mr. Gilbertson?
Yeah, I just wanted, other thing that I found out today, the vet signs poles are in, so that'll be going up soon. That's it.
Mr. Farley, you have anything to bring to council? Okay. Mr. Treat?
Yes, I was not able to attend the last meeting, and there was discussion about a tractor. I would like to bring that back to council in a couple weeks. My guys do need a newer vehicle or a newer piece of equipment to do their portion of what we use it for. And I know, Dale, I don't want to steal your thunder. I know Dale mentioned that we did get a deficiency from Eagle on the water side, more or less a violation. And it's because we do not have a residential backflow program, which means they want us to test or inspect every home in the village over a 10-year period. It's very expensive. Dale and I are going to fight it as best we can because I need to know another community that does this. I don't know of one yet. So, but yeah, that's it.
Mr. Schneider?
did you find out if that rebate still holds on the tractor?
I don't know yet. There
Okay.
was a $4,000 rebate on it. I think it was 4,000, wasn't it, Dale?
3,500.
3,500.
President Pro Tem Stafford?
Nope.
Councilmember Powell?
Also,
Councilmember Miller? I just want to say thanks for all the good questions. I want to thank staff for preparing and the hours they put in on the budget work over the last 3 weeks. I know it's not been easy for you guys, and it's appreciated by council. We're adjourned. Thanks for everybody for attending tonight.